Hello and welcome to that man. That is me merchandise, and today we are looking at Silver Spoon. Yes, a series that I have long been wanting to actually read, but I've never had the opportunity. And I'll tell you how I got that opportunity right now. It was on 3 for 2 and I bought 2 other things and this was there and I was like, you know what, I'm going to start it. It doesn't have a digital release, so there's not going to be any other way for me to read it. But I'm so glad I did, and I'm going to tell you why again right now. This has been released by Yen Press, and like I said, Yen Press are pretty good at releasing digital stuff, but not so much this one. I'm not really sure if there's a reason for that, but yeah. And this is actually by Hiromu Arakawa, the woman who created Full Metal Alchemist. That's right, she is still making manga. And I'm going to be honest, Full Metal Alchemist is a series that I watched. That's all I can say. It's something for a story for another day. It is something I do plan on covering soon. But I thought I'd try Silver Spoon. There's not... like stuff like Barakamon and Yotsuba and stuff like that, I am really getting into more slice of life, countryside kind of things. One of my favourite game series of all time is Harvest Moon, and I live in an area where I have been able to experience a lot of agriculture. I live in the UK, I live on the outskirts of a big city, and there is a whole farming area kind of just behind us. And when I went abroad, when I went on holiday, we would often go through farms, we would often see wildlife, we would often see cattle, pigs, sheep, and there was many school trips to a farm. So I've kind of always had a little bit of interest. Wouldn't have done it as a job, but I have had enough of an interest to kind of say, yeah, I want to know more about this. And so Silver Spoon, as soon as I saw it's a farming manga, something that I haven't really seen much else of. Maybe Nerima Daikon Brothers and slightly Barakamon. I thought I'd check it out, and I'm so glad that I did. Right, so this tells the story of a young man, Yugo Hachiken, who is bored with life, he's in a bit of a rut, and he changes from a normal college into an agriculture college, thinking, you know what, I'm not being challenged enough here, I'm going to go here. And he's like, well, there's not much stuff, it's not quite as demanding for exams and stuff like that. And he's a smart lad, he knows his way around maths, he knows his way around science. However, none of that prepares him for the agricultural college he goes to, named Uizu Agricultural High School. So he assumes that it's going to be easy, he assumes it's going to be a bit of a break from him. However, his eyes are wide open. Now, what I love about this series is that it doesn't skirt around issues. Issues that it even says itself that would be a big issue over in the UK or in the US, where we consider, I don't want to sound rude, but we seem to consider animals priority more than Japan does. This isn't so giving them a dig, it's just kind of, this is the way that things work. One of the things that Hachiko kind of realises early on is that everything's done very efficiently. So, for example, he's in this school, and normally I would expect something like this, they'd be like, oh, these are all free-range hens, and then they're just like, no, this is a battery farm, and they even say, most people in the UK or the US wouldn't approve of this, however, it's very efficient. And I'm like, yeah, that is the mindset of Japan, efficiency over anything else. And it's stuff like that that really makes this excel. I'm really happy that they didn't skirt around issues, and I'm really happy that they have focused on stuff that, because at the end of the day they're not gonna in more series, for example, he picks up a pig and he's just like, I'm gonna name you that, and they're like, don't you name that pig, don't do it. And he's like why? He's like, you'll get attached. And he was like, well, what do you mean? He's like, it's only going to live like 6 months and then we're going to kill it. Anything else he would have saved, any other series he would have saved that, and that pig would be a main character. And it's like, it's very much the truth and reality of the business. We've got to remember stuff like a lot of farms are a business, and in Japan where their attitudes are different, it's kind of like, yeah, don't get attached to it, it'll make it so much difficult 6 months down the line. There's like stuff, it's like, oh, catch the chickens, and it's like, oh, brilliant, I caught the chickens, what do you want of them? And it's like, here you go, ching, we've got to have chicken later on. And he's just like, yeah, okay. And I'm like, yeah, well, what do you think the chickens are there for? It's actually quite weird. It's like, I mean, I'm not exactly wanting to pick sides here, but it's like, this is the reality of the farming industry in Japan. And even over here, at the end of the day, it's one of those things. They say, why would we have the chickens? Otherwise, they wouldn't have a life if they weren't being raised for this. And sadly, it is an unfortunate life existence they have. But then they're like, well, they said, well, they wouldn't have a life otherwise. It's actually a horrible manga, but it's actually incredibly good. And I really love the way how he, like you said, he's a fish out of water, unsurprisingly. He's like, well, I'm good at maths, and they're like, well, maths is like, in all of the written exams, it's like, that's like 5% of your curriculum. You're in a farm thing. Everyone else who is introduced is all from farming backgrounds. It's like, well, this guy's like, he's in charge of all the chickens, and she's from like a horse area, and this one raises pigs, and this one raises crops, and this one wants to be a vet. And it's like, yeah, all of these people are here because they are focused on that industry. And he's just there like, oh, well, I'll do maths. And it's like, don't really care about maths. I do love this manga. I'm glad I picked it up. I will be picking up more in the future, and I will cover them as and when I do them. It's one of those series that, because I'm starting quite early, I want to do more about it. There is a few little bit of issues, and even then it's stuff that you get a bit of laugh out, and you're like, oh, actually I'm quite surprised about this. For example, there's one character who is called Tamango, and she's shaped like an egg, and they're very much, oh, fat jokes, and then it's just like, but then there's like weird jokes there. It's like there's like a storm, and she's the only one who's blown away, and it was like, how on earth are you managing that? And it's just like, it's not kind of fatty, and it's more like, it feels smarter. It feels more of a kind of thing, and she's happy with the way she looks. It's not a kind of it doesn't feel mean-spirited. And I was like, at first I was a bit uncomfortable with the way they were kind of discussing some of this stuff, but then the more it went on, I was like, yeah, this is actually quite, it doesn't feel as mean as it would in any other series. Most other series boys wouldn't even use that as a joke. And yeah, it's the kind of way that this is written that it really makes me enjoy it. I'm really enjoying his struggles as a fish out of water, and they've been like, everything that is introduced to us is introduced to him. He can't eat because he knows what's happened. He kind of has a personal attachment to some of these animals. It's like, oh, I caught this chicken, and it's like, this is now my lunch. And it's like, he can't wrap that around his head. If you lived on a farm, there's something like that might be a little bit more normal. But for him, he's just kind of like, yeah, I can't eat anything. And they're like, you're going to have to eat something because you're going to be working 15 hours a day. And it's like, it's very much kind of, it's very much feels like it's something where people are trying to comfort themselves and tell them something, and then the reality just slaps them in the face. That's the kind of manga it is. Like I said, if it was any other manga, it's like he'd befriend all of the animals, and the animals would live forever in the world of manga. But this one is kind of like it sets your expectations straight away. It's like, yeah, these animals aren't probably going to make it. Don't get attached to them, and they literally are animals. It's not like he's befriending them and stuff like that. He's like having to step back. There is a whole thing with horses, and there was the whole sad truth with horses. There's a one episode chapter where they have like a whole thing with, because he joins the equestrian club, I believe that's how it's pronounced, and he's like, oh yeah, I'm gonna do this, I'm gonna do that, and then they go to a racetrack, and one of the girl he likes, she's like, oh well, our farm's got a horse involved, and he's like, oh well, brilliant, he's did really well, and it's like, be glad that he hasn't done it. She was like, no, I'm glad that he did. She was like, I'm glad that he placed at 3 because he gets to live another year. And then they have a whole thing with like a funeral, because like they're like, well, this horse didn't make it. This horse injured itself. This horse can't work, and that is the reality of these animals. It doesn't skirt around these issues, and for me, I would really recommend it. Even if you are vegetarian or vegan and you want to see a little bit more, I would still recommend it. It's not really a food anime, it's a kind of, this is reality, this is the world we live in kind of anime. Manga even. There is an anime, I haven't watched it, but I believe Anime Limited's coming out. Again, that is something I want to discuss a little bit later, not in this video. We have a whole project. I say we, I got a project. But yes, Silver Spoon, I would really recommend it, and I think it's telling that a lot of time I can only talk about a manga for about 5-10 minutes. This one I've spoke about for about 10 plus, and I really recommend you trying it. Sadly, it's not got a digital release. I really hope that Yen Press changed that. But if you are in the area or wherever, if you do see this, or to even full price, I would really recommend it. Definitely worth trying it. That's it from me. Thank you for coming, and if you enjoyed this, please leave a like, please subscribe, it really helps out. And if you've read this, what do you think of it? Have you enjoyed it? What do you think of it compared to Full Metal Alchemist? Because I know Full Metal Alchemist is considered one of the greatest series of all time, but I felt, at least from Volume 1, I felt this is going to be a stronger series. Let me know what you think. But for now, thanks for coming, and thanks again for staying. Goodbye.